We are looking at the ordinary Ghanaian whose monthly income is about 600, 700, 800 cedis. And you expect such a person to take about 20-25% of his monthly income to buy just LPG. We believe that is too harsh for the ordinary Ghanaian to bear. And that is why we have been calling on government to take measures, serious measures. If government is really, really serious at doubling consumption of LPG in the next 10 years, then there's the need for us to take serious measures to bring the price of LPG down. Because, LPG is a product with an elastic demand. Any additional increment, any additional change a personal change in the LPG goes a long way to affect the consumption negatively or positively, depending on where the price is. So once you have prices going up, then definitely you can expect that consumption of the product is going to suffer. And it's clear. When you look at the statistics, the statistics show that LPG consumption in Ghana is on the decline.
That's quite interesting. You did mention some of these cost elements that add up to this. You mentioned, the cost on the international market. You mentioned the taxes, and then, of course, the margins that the marketers also have on there. Now, I want to go into these taxes. Were there any stakeholder conversations with government, on which particular taxes that can be reviewed or looked at or taken off so that the prices at the pumps can come down?
Well, if government wants to impose taxes, stakeholder consultation is not the way to go, because nobody wants to pay tax. I mean, naturally, human being by our nature wouldn't want to pay tax. The government will just come and say, this is what I want to do. Like it happened in the introduction of the e-levy, and it's suffering some difficulties. LPG, we used to subsidize LPG at the introductory stage in the 80s and then in the 2000s. We did that till consumption of LPG began to grow in Ghana. That was around 2010, 2012, thereabout. At that point, the government said that the subsidy amount you was paying on the product was too much. You can no longer find the money. So we withdrew the subsidy and we went full cost recovery. So the government was not taxing LPG, neither was it subsidizing. Till somewhere 2015, when price of crude oil dropped so low. At that point, price of LPG dropped very, very, very low. So government saw that as an opportunity to rake in some few money. So it introduced, that is when taxes like the special petroleum tax and all those other taxes came on the product. Over the years, what has happened is that the taxes has remained very constant on the products, while crude oil price keep inching up. So when you have a constant amount of tax on the product and the cost price of the product keep moving up, you should expect that the pump price at the end of the day is going to move up. And that is what the taxes has remained very constant on the product, the crude oil price. At that time, when the taxes were introduced, crude oil was less than $30 per barrel. Now we are having crude oil almost $120 per barrel, but the taxes are still constant on the product. And this is what has shot the price of the product so high to the extent that the ordinary Ghanaian is no longer able to afford. Now, if you look at our forest, Ghana's forest is one of the fastest depleting in Africa. In fact, it's the fastest. We are cutting down for firewood and for charcoal and for other wood fuel sources. LPG was supposed to be the one to save our forest. LPG was supposed to be the one to save our river bodies. LPG is the one supposed to save our environment. And eventually, LPG is the one to save Mother Ghana. Because there's a saying that when the last tree dies, the last man dies. So if you are going to sit down and allow all our trees to be cut down, to be used as wood, people must eat. I mean, our village folks must eat. If they can't afford the LPG, there's an alternative. And the alternative is firewood and charcoal. And they will cut a tree. You can't stop them. They will destroy the forest. Our river bodies will dry up. Our environment will keep depleting. So government must take very, very, very serious. Must take a serious look at LPG if we are to save this country.
In all this, what would be your ideal way forward to tackle this issue on all these increments happening with regards to even globally? Yes, it's happening there, but we're still looking at how we can manage and subsidize all this back home. What would be the way forward with this? or your advice, to government on this?
The first step is to take measures to remove every tax from LPG. That is the first thing we need to do.
So make LPG completely untaxed?
Yes, we don't have to tax the product because our West African neighbors are not taxing it. Most West Africa countries are not taxing the LPG. Indeed, some of them are subsidizing. Go to our neighbor Cote d'Ivoire here, they are subsidizing the product. So why do we, if we can, in Chile, they say, if you can't subsidize the product, don't tax it. Leave it at cost. Because we believe the benefit we stand to gain as a country by pushing up consumption of LPG, by doubling consumption of LPG in the next 10 years, will far more outweigh the benefit we are gaining from these taxes. Yes, we know government money, but you don't take money, you don't hurt yourself. You need to take money where it doesn't hurt too much. You don't destroy your bodies, you don't destroy your forests, you don't destroy your environment, you don't destroy your country just because you want to take tax from on the product. So the first step is for government to look at all those taxes must go. And our consistent and persistent call over the past 4 or 5 years for government to remove these taxes is now being reinforced by the rise in the international prices of the product. As I did indicate, when the taxes were introduced on the product, crude oil was as low as less than $30 per barrel.
So it made sense at that time.
It makes sense. At that time, it makes sense for you to want to put some tax on. But what government should have done was that as crude oil prices was coming up, it should have also taken measures to reduce the taxes on the product. So that by this time, there will be no, where we have crude oil prices now, there will be no tax on the product. But we have kept the taxes very constant. In fact, we've been even making attempts, we've been even introducing more taxes on the product. A product your neighboring countries are subsidizing. Why? Are we the poorest in Africa or the poorest in West Africa? We find ourselves as one of the giants in West Africa. Even those whose economy are even less stronger than ours are subsidizing the product. So why can't we? If you go to Mali, they come to buy LPG from Ghana, transport it to Mali, but they are subsidizing the product because of the enormous benefit that a country as a whole stands to gain by consuming more LPG. But in Ghana, we are in decline. And that is very, 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 very dangerous for this country.
What are the members saying with the 5% increment that has come on there? Is it enough for them? Is it okay?
Well, the members have nothing to do than to pass that 5% on the product onto the consumer. It's the consumer who is going to bear the brunt of this price increase at the end of the day. As I said, it's the cost of the product. You go and buy the product you used to buy at 10 cedis. Now you are buying it at 11 cedis. So obviously you cannot sell it at 11 cedis that you used to sell. You will be forced to sell at 12 cedis because there are other taxes and margins that has to be put on the product. So it's the cost, the base cost of the product, which is driving this increment. And our members have nothing to do than to pass on the cost to the ordinary consumer to bear.
Wow. Anyway, well, it's been great talking to you, Gabby. I think, like rightly said, and we are expecting more increments coming soon, mid-March, isn't it?
Yes. Expect the price of LPG to be going up not until somewhere for the next 2-3 months. Expect the price of LPG to be going up every 2 weeks. And our projection is that if measures are not taken, by June this year, we should be buying the LPG per kilo to about 14-15 cedis per kilo.
Wow.
And that will shoot your 14 kg that you use at home for about 250 cedis to fill. And that will disenfranchise a lot of Ghanaians. That will slow down consumption. That will put a lot of pressure on charcoal and wood fuel at the expense of our environment, at the expense of our rivers, and at the expense of our forest reserves.